up and maybe have a hard day, easy day, or sometimes I'll work on different aspects of training on different days. Not only do you introduce variety, but by switching up the intensity, you introduce a contrast that actually stimulates a more beneficial adaptation. Next thing is volume. And if you recall earlier, I said that volume and intensity are kind of the two primary guiding factors that go into setting up training. Whether we're talking about your baseball skill development, whether we're talking about your weightlifting program, your sprint development, your med ball programs, what we want to try to do is balance intensity and volume over the course of the year, within a training session, within the week, so that we're getting optimal results. If we try to really hit both of these hard at the same time, what do you think is going to happen? Kid's going to be tired. We're going to introduce overtraining. When we introduce overtraining, the main thing that's going to happen for speed power athletes is central nervous system is going to be shut down. A lot of autonomic functions are going to not run as smoothly as possible. So that means your things like eye tracking, if that may be a result of overtraining. One thing that I have noticed as a indication of central nervous system fatigue in speed power athletes is just minor things like, well, maybe you bit your lip, kind of weird things like that. If you do things that are, maybe you wake up and you trip out of bed, just normal types of things if your balance is a little bit off. Those types of normal hindbrain activities, they may be an indication of that you've pushed the limit on these two parameters a little bit too much. Frequency is just what it sounds like, the frequency of training, whether we're talking about the dosage within a session, the dosage within a week, that type of thing. How often we hit a specific parameter or a specific training method. I gave the example yesterday of speed training and said we probably only want to do that 2 to 3 times per week because it is so intensive that if we tried to push the volume higher than that or push the frequency higher than that, we'd run into some overtraining. So here's the supercompensation model. And what this model says, there's 2 models, remember, supercompensation and fitness fatigue. And this can kind of be considered a one-factor model. The way the supercompensation model works, it's basically works on the premise that the way that we get better is through this supercompensation here. We introduce a training session. After the training session, there's a depletion of some type of biological factors. It's not really necessary to understand what biological factors or parameters we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about glycogen. Maybe we're dealing with microtraumas. So we induce this training session. There's a performance decrement here. But we know if we allow a recovery period of, say, 24 hours, 48 hours, we're going to bounce back to better than ever. This is a simple model here. I think the more realistic model is what I use, and this is called the fitness fatigue model. In this model, we get the training session. This induces both fitness and fatigue. Immediately after the training session, we have our fitness level is immediately higher. But at the same time, we've also introduced some fatigue. But our performance, or what we can call our preparedness, how ready we are to perform at a high level, is a byproduct of this fitness curve and the fatigue curve. So initially, when we introduce this training session and the fatigue is relatively high, it may outweigh the potential benefit that we've had on fitness. So as a result, our preparedness, illustrated by this green line, is actually at a performance decrement. We're lower than we were before the training session. If we give a rest period, though, we'll bounce back higher. It's somewhat semantics on which model you use, but the important thing to realize here is that whether we're talking about this one here or whether we're talking about this one, what we want to try to do is plan so that each one of these supercompensations, or this period where our preparedness is higher, we want to try to plan so that this has an additive effect. So for example,